youth issues.
Okay, thank you very much. And given how this process is working, um, how have you accepted this new reform?
I think that with a strategic point of departure from political players in our country, particularly in ZANU-PF, um, predominantly on principle that amendment number 2, while it's that it brings in representation of young people in a representative capacity, giving chances to young people, we differ with that amendment for the following reasons. Number one, we think that the broader amendment number 2 pushes for executive tyranny in our country, and also puts a lot of power within the executive, thereby undermining the constitution which we should be implementing. So we fundamentally differ about the amendment itself. The number 2, on youth quota, philosophically, as a young person, I think that we are the major demographic dividend, judging from the population census that was last held in this country. Number 2, also judging from the statistics that is exact. The previous plebiscite was predominantly dominated by young people, those who are between the ages of 18 and 35. So we're the major demographic dividend. Why give us a quota? We should be talking about an elders quota because young people are the majority. So we believe that the youth quota is insufficient, in our view, to represent the broader demographic dividend of young people. So there shouldn't be, in our view, our respectful views that it is insufficient to answer the question of youth representation or demographic representation,
Okay.
particularly in parliament.
Okay, so definitely there is an aspect of differences of views. But Stendo, what would you say in regards to this is something that we haven't had, traditionally in our setup, and this is something new. So how do we then, ease ourselves into it? Because it's not something that's been common, but we're trying to make strides with this.
Okay, thank you. What we need to understand and appreciate is that we can never be able to get to something before we get to it. Right now, we have got this provision that has been put aside, which does not exclude young people from getting into any other position. Already, this is just an addition of what exactly is existing for young people to be involved into politics. As we stand right now, young people can actually get into the 210 seats. I think the constitution has been clear to that. It says for you to be able to qualify, you need to be a registered voter, and you also need to be above the age of 21. And this alone also shows what is entitled, what one is supposed to be having for one to become an MP. So what it means is on the 210 seats, young people can actually get there. There is no limitation. They can actually be able to access these 210 seats. But what has been there is a provision which then enhances or also adds on what currently is existing. And there we have the 10 seats which are there on the proportional representative, which are specific to youth. And then we've got an additional 10 seats which is specific to young women under the PR system on the 60 seats that we have that have been set aside for proportional representative, especially in the National Assembly. We have got now an additional 10 seats that have been added that will actually be there to be looking at women. So for us as young people, I'm saying on the 210 seats that we have, we've got an additional 20 seats. 10 seats being those that are supposed to be under the PR, which are specific to women, and then 10 seats which are supposed to be in the whole country, which are supposed to be benefited by young people which are below the age of 35. So for me, I'm saying, when I look at it, I'm saying we have never had this, but what we need to appreciate and understand is that we have got a provision which is quite new. We have got a provision which I believe that we need to take it and say this is an addition from what we had before. And I think as young people, we need to embrace it and say, of course, I know we have got 67%, we constitute 67% of the whole constitution of the whole population of Zimbabwe. But what we are saying is that this is an addition which was not there, and I think we need to embrace it and see how best we can then be able to navigate.
Okay, so we're trying to see out how we can, move forward with this setup. So now, since the youth quota seats will be filled via political parties, how can youths that are not affiliated to any political parties influence the process of the decision of who makes it to the 10 seats? Since we're saying they're going to be filled via political parties, but if you're not affiliated to any political parties, how do we incorporate them? I'll start with you, Talent.
Well, thank you very much. It is very unfortunate that according to what the process of electing these candidates, to what Honorable Tenda Mavetera said earlier on, one has to be part of the membership of political parties. But I would suggest that, we as the youth, we are not leaders of tomorrow, but we are leaders of today. And we have to influence this process. So if one doesn't want to be part of any political organization, I would rather say you should ensure that you are part of organizations like, even in the civic society, we've got trade unions, we've got student unions. Tracing history, we can find out that MDC is a child of ZCTU and Zinasu. These are important organizations which can actually come up with with strategic objectives to actually give room for those people who do not want to be politically affiliated but have the chance to influence and partake in these processes.
Gift, do you share the same sentiments in terms of youths not affiliated to any political party?
I think that my personal and institutional views are that we think that it's important to recognize capacities of individuals outside political parties, but looking at the tradition and history of our politics in this country, my view is obviously that one has to belong to a political institution of choice, because there are a number of political parties in this country, and the law is quite flexible for people to register to have a political party that contests, in presidential and parliamentary elections in this country. So my feeling is that the debate, in my view, is not here nor there, because the position of a political party is that maybe is the organization big enough because it's on representative capacity. So if your party is the one that has won the majority, that's why our feeling is that the seats are insufficient, because if you win in Harare province, you get one seat into parliament. So which means the major political party, which in this case is obviously the MDC under Nelson Chamisa, is one that is obviously going to get that parliamentary seat and send a representative. So my feeling is that while this is obviously going to be beneficial to the progressive movement, I feel that it is insufficient to answer the question of representation, because we must look at the central strategic objective of youth representation. Why do we want youth to be represented in parliament? And yes, I accept that there are going to be 10 seats. We accept it also as a political party, but we feel that this strategy around which it is also being smuggled into parliament, because this amendment, you were saying that it was passed in parliament through a super majority. I think that it was rushed into parliament without following the same constitution, because this is a huge amendment in the constitution. For me, the fundamental debate is that we are, as a nation, actually destroying the constitution that is we are supposed to be implementing. So for me, that is the fundamental debate, but obviously as young people are then given, well, we are being softened by this, 10 seats, which comes with a bulk of huge amendments of the constitution, which we should be safeguarding as a generation, because this document is going to last for some time. And I genuinely feel that the youth representative amendment was rushed into parliament amongst another bulk of amendments that pushes for executive tyranny.
I think just to sidetrack to what Tatenda did highlight earlier, when we're looking at this, new introduction, we're going back to, did we have this kind of setup before? We have been crying for the youths to be, included, and as we're trying to see if we can develop a way forward, like what we did with the women's quota system. We're trying to develop a way forward, and I think I'll bring it back to when we're saying we want inclusion of the youths, and we are saying, okay, fine, it's just for this political party, but what of those that are not in political parties? So I think, Tatinda, if you could weigh in on that to say, yes, there might be a lot of differences on whether it's sufficient or whether it was smuggled or rushed or if it was the right decision. But how do we have to embrace the decision that's made, that's what's there, but how do we fully capitalize on it?
Okay, thank you. Let me be able to respond to what you had previously asked when it comes to political parties. We need to understand, when we're a church or when we're Christians, we know that we can only get to believe in Christianity because we believe in Jesus. This is exactly what we need to understand when we're talking about politics. Politics is politics, and it remains like that. And we need to understand that there are some certain dictates that define what politics is all about. Politics is all about power. Politics is all about cohesion. Politics is about making sure that at least as much as you can be independent, you can be independent. I understand and appreciate. But if you look at us, even if you look at the panel today, you have got people that are coming from different political parties. And political parties, because of the numbers that they also cohere, this also defines what we talk about when we're talking about politics. So in a way, we need to understand that as much as we have got this, we're looking at this. When we look at even the definition of these 10 seats and the additional 10 for the women, which makes 20, we need to understand it's a proportional representative. Proportional representative of us, of what? We need to understand that traditionally as a country, we have never had sufficient numbers when it comes to independent candidates. That is known, and we have known that. So because of that, we have had sufficient numbers when it comes to parties. So the proportion can only come from parties. There is no way it can come from independent candidates, because at the end of the day, it is not sufficient enough because of traditionally what has happened and what has evolved around our political systems. We need also to appreciate that even the way that we vote, people don't usually vote because of a political party. They vote because, like what he said, I think Mr. Ostallos said it very clearly, that here in Harare, we know that probably we are going to be having a person coming from his political party. Yes, because we know when people vote, sometimes they also are pushed because of the political party that they also have to be representing. But however, the second question that you went on then to also be asking is how then are we able to embrace? As young people, I think being also a young MP, I think considering that already we have this on our table, what we need to understand is the 210, we need to be clear here. The issue here was on us adding some seats which were never there. But then women or young people are not excluded from getting into the 210 seats. This has to be clear. So what has to be happening is that we are getting an addition. Why can't we embrace an addition which has already been there? What I think needs to be done is that we are hoping, and this is just a Fabian call, that I hope that even for the 10 seats that are supposed to be having women, the young women that is, we are hoping that at least to make sure that at least with those that are supposed to be getting into parliament, we are hoping that those 10 will actually be able to get into parliament so that we can add the numbers when it comes to young women. And then even on the 10 seats, those 10 seats, they are so clear. We know that the proportion, though the party that has got the greatest proportion will get the greatest seats. So what it means, if Harare is going to be, if MDCT is going to be having 30%, MDC is going to be having 40%, ZANU-PF is going to be having 90%, or is going to be having 60%. What it then does is that ZANU-PF will get that seat here in Harare. That is for the one seat, because it is supposed to be given and awarded out of a proportion. So we need to understand that the one that has got the most percentage is the one that will be able to shield or to be able to field a candidate within that certain that certain area. So this is how it works, and this is how the proportional representative is going to be working. It is a game of numbers, and I understand that politics is a game of numbers. So as young people, I think we need to add this, and then we still need to go to those 210 seats which are there, and then we need to make sure that at least we elbow out whoever is there, so that as young people we're able to occupy this space. This is my thinking, and I think this is what we need to do. That as young people, we need to have the capacity that I think we need to do is for us to actually be able to see that at least let us not sit at the periphery, but we need to be involved in this whole conversation so that we can actually be involved in this whole setup.
Thank you very much. I think Gift, you were shaking your head.
Yeah,
before you respond to that, I think one of the key points was the issue of proportional representation, and you also then highlighted that for your party, in the instance of your party, you have a majority in Harare, but we're looking at, this is not just about Harare. We want to see if this can pan out to the rest of Zimbabwe, and in the issue of these are seats that are guaranteed, that are there, but we do have young MPs. If I'm not mistaken, we had about 6 in the previous elections. So we do have young MPs.
Now we are now on 8.
Now we are now on 8. So how do we then, move forward to say, despite having 10 guaranteed seats, are we aware? Are they aware? Are young people aware that it's not about just, there are these 10 seats, but you can also work to it? We have examples. So are they pushing hard enough to get to that stage instead of waiting for these 10 seats?
Of course, that is our strategic focus as the democratic alternative. Our focus is that the 210 seats should be dominated by young people. Our belief as the Youth Assembly of the MDC Alliance is that we must be able to field candidates for the next plebiscite, particularly in parliament and local authorities, because we feel that we are the majority, and we don't believe that we must be given crumbs in the form of a youth quota, because it is not reflective. Because as she is saying, the youth quota system wants to create a narrative around which, and I think we face the same challenge within the women's quota system, that you get, and there's a study that was conducted, I think, by Veritas, that shows that most political parties will eventually say, no, you can't contest in that constituency because women, you already have a youth quota system. So the danger about populating and popularizing a youth quota with only 10 seats means that you young people across the political divide risk being pushed away from the 210 seats that you're talking about, to be said, no, there's a quota for you. So we believe that we must be dominant for obvious reasons. I don't think that the parliament that she currently sits in, I don't think that it is sufficient legislative arm to hold the executive to account, even particularly on this debate of the amendment number 2, because I expected to be a robust debate around processes and legal procedures of the amendment itself. And that thing can only be pushed by young people. So our philosophical belief and principal position as the MDC Alliance Youth Assembly is that we must have young people dominating that august house for the purpose of quality of debate. You go to parliament, majority of these people are there to get coupons and sleeping in hotels. There's no quality of debate. Gerontocracy, everything is passed without parliamentary approval. And these things are going to affect our own generation. An example, which is on the amendment, is that the amendment says that we are going to have dates and engagement with international financial institutions without parliamentary approval. So for me, the executive, that's why we talk about the executive tyranny. So only a generation of young people are capable to sit down in a library and read things, because we can't rush an amendment in parliament because they are saying we're going to give you seats. That is my major debate. That for me, young people must be in that august house and must be local authorities outside the constitutionally provided 10 seats, because there must be debate in parliament, particularly holding the executive to account. Because the executive in this country is not being held to account, and only the legislature has the constitutional mandate to do so. So I believe that young people must go to parliament outside the constitutionally provided proportional representative seat. They must get the 200 seats, 210 seats across the country must be dominated by young people for the purposes of make sure that our parliament becomes robust and gets the necessary teeth that it needs to transform the concrete realities of our people.
Okay, so
to conclude,
just to be clear, if you could hold, just to be clear, are you saying we are not in support of the act, or you are pushing for more seats, or what's your take?
No, our principal position is that we are morally not supporting the amendment number 2, because the 10 seats are just crumbs for us. If we are focusing in the future,
of 10 years to talk of 20,
because we're
the
talking about
20
10 from the youth seats
the
as
20
well.
seats are not sufficient in our view to answer the question of demographic youth representative in parliament. And I wanted to respond quickly on the question of because we have to inform young people. I don't think that is fair to say politics is about power. Politics is about transforming the concrete realities of the suffering masses of our people. It shouldn't be about power and for power's sake. So we are willing to forego the benefit of 10 seats for the purpose of holding a principle. And that's what, in our view, politics should be about. Because as long as it doesn't transform the realities of the young people that we represent, and we must not go for it, even if it tends to benefit me as an individual. I'm the Secretary General of the Youth Assembly. And as a senior, it's obviously that you tend to have that hierarchical appropriation of seats and so forth. I don't believe in that, because if I get to parliament and that parliament is insufficient to answer the concrete needs of millions of young people in this country, for me, that's not something that I'm willing to go for.
Okay. Talent, I'll bring it to you. What's your take? Do you think this amendment will benefit the youth in any way? Especially when we're looking at, we have differences from MDC Alliance that they're saying, it could not be sufficient enough. There are crumbs. What's your take as MDCT?
Okay, thank you very much. First, I would want to admit that yes, 10 might look like it's a small number, but I think the youth will benefit from those 10 candidates because, as if we say, if we take that our demographic is well represented in parliament, as my sister has said here, she said that the youth constitute about almost 60% of the total population of Zimbabwe. Yes, I agree. But if we are well represented in parliament, I generally as youth we have got our expectations that are going to fall on those who are going to be in parliament, and I'm sure that as it stands to reason, they will have to make sure that these expectations are met despite of their political parties, and at some point they are going to actually do away with their political parties' interests and make sure that they get to focus on the real issues of the youth. Parliament is a powerful platform where where youth issues can actually be brought to national fore. And I would love to believe that these people would not want to exploit such an opportunity to pursue towards youth issues. And also, I would love to believe that Parliament is a grand stage where youth issues can actually, even their voices can actually be amplified. Like she said, politics is about power, and in Parliament it comes with the corridors of power, and with power it comes the great influence. So, as young people, we need to grasp this opportunity and make sure that we get to be part and parcel of these processes to influence. Enough of the time where we just sit back and go back on Twitter, on social media, and start waffling many things. Let's get to be involved, because this is a starting point for us to actually reach to somewhere. We need to understand that our life is not about tomorrow. The future is now. This is the life that we are living in. And if we deny and say, this will not benefit us, this is a starting point. And I would love to believe that those 10 candidates that are going to parliament, it is their mandate to ensure that they go forward and continue with, reinforcing policies that will actually increase the number, and also promote other youth out there with resources or whatever means that they can help, so that we actually increase the number and make sure that our voices are heard as youth.
Thank you very much, Helen.
Okay, I
Wait,
just
before-
wanted to
no, no, no,
respond
no,
to
no, no.
something.
I wanted to address from what she said, and then you can respond to that one. She did say that Parliament is about the people, and from your experience in Parliament, we're looking at how some people may raise concerns that probably MPs are not doing enough, and when we're saying the youths are now coming into power, do we have not a guarantee as such, but can we be sure to say we'll have more accountability, and they can then prove their worth for them to be able to say, we have the 10 seats from the youth quota and the 10 seats from the women's quota. How effective can this be? How will this benefit the youth?
Okay, thank you very much. I'm going to respond to you, but I just thought maybe I should also make it clear on how we came to be where we are on this Constitutional Amendment number 2.
Okay.
The reason why Parliament had to go through this process, whether we MPs are given coupons or what, that is what they're supposed to be getting. This is something which is constitutional.
Okay.
The process that we went through for us to approve as MPs is something which we agreed in 2013 when we put our constitution. So we need to understand and appreciate that this is constitutional. It's a constitutional provision whereby as Parliament we're supposed to be approving any amendments of this nature. That's why we went on and got to that stage. And then I also wanted to talk about the issue of power, the issue of representation. We need to understand one thing here, that when we talk about politics, we are saying politics evolves on power. But when we talk about leadership is there to transform nations, is there to transform people's lives. These are two different things altogether that we need to understand. As much as leadership gets into politics, but we need to understand that when we're talking about politics, what evolves around it? How do we determine what politics is all about? Politics is about influence. Politics is about power, just like what Talent has said. And we need to understand what it is all about. As much as we get into politics, we then talk about leadership, whereby we're saying when we're in politics, we are now leaders. What do we do? We transform people's lives. We are there to, like what my president has always said, Dr. Mnangagwa, he has always said, no, the issue is so clear. Servant leadership is key. And this is what we need to do as leaders of Zimbabwe. And how then as young people are we supposed to do this? I want us to take a very good conversation here. We've got 8 MPs right now, which are young people. I think that as young people, for us or for people to really believe in us, we need to be more visible than what we are proving right now. As it stands right now, I really want to appreciate the efforts that we're doing as the 8 parliamentarians which are below the age of 35, which are in parliament. But what we are saying is we need to go a step forward and put more energy so that at least we are seen there, so that we can prove people that as young people we're able to do it. It's not a question that when we get young people, we are so guaranteed, but we are guaranteed of energy. We are guaranteed that when young people do it, they will effectively be able to occupy certain positions and actually create the change that we might want to see. Currently, we are not saying that the crop which is there is actually not doing well. The crop which is there right now, we need an intergenerational dialogue that we need to do as young people. The moment that we think we need to elbow out the older people so that we get in as young people, we have got a crisis there. What we need to understand as young people is that we need to then be able to embrace the older people so that we learn from them, so that they mentor us, so that at least we understand what is expected from us. As young people, for us to be where we are today is because we got through some certain processes of life, whereby we crawled, we walked, and then we ran. This is the process of life. We need to go step by step. So for me, I feel that as young people, we don't need to say, okay, our space right now has been taken by older people. That's not it. We need to learn from them. We need them to mentor us. We need the young people for them to be able to take us there and say, this is where we are. Look here, Mr. Ostallos, this is what you have done well. This is how we are supposed to learn, because this is what we're supposed to be doing as young people. But the moment that we say our space right now has been occupied by older people, what it means that we are now having conflict. So we won't be able to occupy these positions, because as it stands right now, if you look even in parliament, like what he's saying, we have got of the 270 seats, we would be looking at 8 or even less than 10, which are actually the young people. Then the voice, when it comes out, yes, we will, but do we have the sufficient numbers? So what we need is a conversation which needs engagement. We need to engage. The moment that we engage, we actually achieve better, rather than the why that the conversation that we need, whereby we need to be elbowing others out, where we need to be fighting, where we need to be violent. That is not the conversation. I think we need to be embracing them so that at least we can learn from them, and then we go forward as young people.
Okay, Tatenda. Gift from a practical and factual perspective of the experience we've been seeing in Parliament, like Honourable has rightfully said, we've had about 8 MPs. How do you think their performance has been? And if we're saying we want more young people in Parliament, how do you feel like their performance will, surpass what has been there already? And in terms of accountability, do you think they can serve the purpose rightfully as the people would want them to?
I think the current parliament is defunct.
No. Let's just say, take it from a
those that are there,
and practical
those that
point
are
of view.
practical. Yes, the current parliament is defunct, in my view, because it is incapable of exercising its constitutional mandate. And she was talking about.
Sorry, just to backtrack, we are looking particularly at the young people that have been in Parliament. How have they been performing so far?
No, the reason why I talk about the whole parliament is because then these young people and they're not seen because of the structural challenges that the present parliament faces. The 8 young people have not had an interaction with them, and there's not been any public, there's not been maybe more public work that is publicized about their work in parliament. I think that the principal position is that the parliament is defunct. It was rendered defunct by what has been happening there, the recalls and everything that has been happening in parliament. I think that the question, in my view, should be then, how do these new young people that are coming in going to change the politics, particularly of parliament? I think that when we have a majority of young people in parliament, and I don't think that we should be apologetic about the question of young people being there. Older people the constitution is very clear. When you reach 70, you must retire. We must not have, and that's why I talk about the challenges of this amendment that we are being hoodwinked to support on the basis of youth quota, because the same amendment says a chief justice, when they are 70, they should be given another term, and a whole lot of illegal things and unconstitutional amendments happening there. I feel that young people must be there in parliament so that they exercise the constitutional mandate, which is to hold the executive to account. And we are going to be there in that parliament. And our agenda is to hold the executive to account, irregardless of their party affiliation and so forth, because that is the task of parliament, to hold the executive to account. Because part of the problems that we're facing in this country is because if parliament is not working, it doesn't have the teeth to bite with all these huge problems that we're facing. Look what's happening today with the corruption reports that are coming out. And only parliament should be able to hold those people to account. And if parliament is defunct, then we've all plethora of problems that are coming in our nation. So in my view, I think that you need fearless young people to go to parliament, so that they go to parliament to hold. And for me, I have to emphasize this, to hold the executive to account, because that is the task of parliament, and to make the law. Look at the laws that are coming in this country. They're draconian. Laws that are being drafted and passed in parliament in this country, they outravise the provision of the very same constitution. So what are these young people who are in parliament doing when the executive says we are going to borrow money from international financial institutions without parliamentary approval, when the constitution is clear? The constitution that she was talking about says a bill of this nature must go through, the public must participate, the Speaker of Parliament must give 90 days notice. That is the constitution. That's what the constitution, and these things were not done. And in my view, the fact that was there public consultation?
Wait.
Yes, there was.
No, those
We
were
don't
podcast.
Okay, wait,
Yes.
before we
Missing
continue,
information.
Those were podcast.
before we
Who
continue,
there were no ordinary people
before
that
you
participated
continue,
in
the
this
good thing
amendment.
is
Don't
we have a
misinform.
youth MP that is here. So the good thing is before we start throwing arrows, we can get to
So
get
throwing
her
arrows,
right
I'm
of
giving
response.
facts there.
We get it
There were
right
no
of
public
response.
consultation.
We get
This
a right
is
of
a huge.
response
Let me
from
tell
her.
you.
So
this,
let's get her take.
No, I'm a citizen.
Yes,
I'm
you
a citizen.
did say
There were no public
they haven't
consultation
been
for us
performing
as
well.
ordinary people. So the
Sorry,
parliament is defunct.
Okay. You did say you raised the issue that parliament is defunct. You raised an issue that they're not performing well. You raised an issue that there is an issue of holding the executive to account. So, Titinda, what's your response to that in regards to his issues that he's raised?
Okay, thank you very much. You know what? We certainly have a problem when we have got certain young people who think that when they are not involved in something, then something is not supposed to be applicable because they are not involved. I'm glad that we have got by-elections that are coming through. I'm glad my brother I will be looking forward to him also making sure that at least he gets into parliament. So at least maybe we can have the voice that he really wants to be out there. Look here, if he is saying of the 207 people that are in parliament, all of them, they are not supposed to be there. Not only they're not supposed to be there, but he is saying that they're incapacitated. I think that is too much. He's going too much for him to be going ahead and saying that. But at the end of the day, I believe that there are a lot of people that he needs to learn from as young as he is. He's also, I understand he is, as he is, he also needs to appreciate that there is also that aspect whereby we need to appreciate what has been done. There is no way we can ever be able to get to where we are when we don't appreciate what history has done, because our history shapes our future. I understand very much. I need to understand also that the issue of us holding the executive to account, that's what we do every single day. So basically what my dear brother here is saying we have not been able to do that yet. I think maybe he has got his own way of us being able to do that, but I think as parliament we've managed to do all that. We have tried to hold the executive to account. That's why you have seen a lot of issues coming out, even on the papers. Be it the Aegis report recently, there was that issue, even the issue to do with even all these corrupt issues. If you remember very well, the issue of the Zinara case, it was actually it spoke about in parliament. So if he's going out there and saying we're incapacitated, we really want to learn from him. I really hope that he will come whenever we have these by-elections, so that at least we can learn from him. Then the issue of
Guys, bloody
they
corrupt,
actually
have you
came
got
to
him
parliament
corrupt?
Sorry,
for
Giselle,
his
we ran
two
out
pack.
of time.
They actually came to parliament. So for us
They
to be going
fired.
ahead,
Tonight, when he was calling, they fired.
Thank you
Through
very
that
much, Gift.
exposure.
We are going
That
to take a
parliament is
very
fake.
short break and we will return just now. Welcome back to the second segment of our Youth Empowerment and Transformation Trust discussion. And our topic is looking at the Beyond Constitutional Amendment 2 Act, political parties' perspective on the youth quota system. Now, in the previous segment, we had a bit of a heated discussion. And I want to bring it to you, Talent. We are discussing the efforts, the achievements that are being done by the current youth MPs. What's your take on this?
Okay, first of all, I would love to comment on what was going on earlier on. I want to make it clear to the youth out there that, this is the time for us to change the narrative of politics in our country. We do not need politics of hate speech. We do not need politics of too much negative energy. We need to be young people who are groomed, young people. I learned this from my president, the most humble president in Zimbabwe, President Douglas Monzora. He's teaching us politics of persuasion, politics of peace and love. This is the reason why you see most young people, they do no longer want to be involved in politics, because in history, it used to be violence, insulting each other, always attacking each other. No, that's not what we want as young people of today. We want politics which is progressive, politics that actually groom us as cultured young people who are focused. We do not want to be insulted as unfocused youth. That's not what we want. We want to be leading by example. We also want to be learning from our elders. So that's my comment. In terms of the achievements that are being done in Parliament, well, I wouldn't want to say much. Much has been said earlier on, but all I can say is, as MDCT, we are very positive that those 10 candidates, those 10 youth that are going to Parliament, wow, they are going to make a change.
Okay, thank you very much. Moving forward with our discussion, looking at the context of the parliamentary whipping system, how will the youth quota system, increase influence of the youth in parliament? I will start with you, Gift. Looking at the parliamentary whipping system, and we're trying to see. My main issue that I'll keep going back to is the issue of accountability. How would this improve the influence of the youth in parliament?
I think that the next Augusta House of this country is going to be influential in terms of, holding the executive to account and executing our mandate. I think that is in my view, our view as the democratic alternative is that young people must be disruptive in their thinking. And that disruptive thinking is not as my other fellow think is being uncultured and so forth. Because you don't have to say, if I'm selling out, I shouldn't sugarcoat my selling out as if it's me, being calm and so forth to things that are not progressive. I think that we must be able to question things, because our task is to tell no lies and claim no easy victories. And I don't think that I must claim a victory or tell a lie for the purpose of safeguarding my own selfish interest. I believe that the next parliament must have young people that are fearless, because when you are fearless as a generation, you are able to hold the executive account. But the future that is being destroyed is the future of our own children. And if we don't hold the executive to account on the basis of being people that they call a rational disputation and whatever bogus philosophical belief systems, I don't think that is proper. We must be able to hold the executive account, and we must be able to make proper laws, because that is my departure with the present setup. I think that young people must be there. Yes, the whipping system is there in parliament, and as a generation, we must be disruptive enough to be able to execute our mandate, because when you are in parliament, you represent a constituency, and your constituents must be able to feel sufficiently represented by you being there in parliament. And how do you represent people in that august house? Is to ensure that laws that are passed are pro-people. Number two, to ensure that the people participate. But that is my challenge with the current amendment, that involvement of an ordinary person was not sufficient. So I believe that the next parliament, which is going to be predominantly dominated by young people, not through the quota system, but by participating in the next plebiscite, ensuring that we win. We must be able, across the political divide, to be able to hold the executive to account, be able to make laws that are sufficient in this country. There's a lot of problems that we're facing in this country at the moment. Majority of them that can be resolved in parliament. And I think that they've not been sufficiently resolved. That's why I strongly believe that parliament is defunct, and only the next plebiscite can be able to resolve that. But also when young people are conscious and understand their mandate, because as a generation, we can't be cowed down by elders on the basis of some intergenerational fictitious belief systems. We should be able to hold these people to account. They fought their struggles, and no one can be hero in two struggles. We should be able to transform the realities of our people in the now. And the question of mentorship can happen. She maintains mentorship. You don't need to be parliament to mentor us. Fundamental departure with the current generation of gerontocrats that are in parliament. They are sleeping there. And for me, the obvious reason is that they're there for coupons and some automobiles that are being given to them. So for me, that's why I reject the current political setup of parliament and believe that young people must be brought into parliament so that there is live debate in parliament about the present and the future. And you can only do that, as I conclude, when you have values, when you have principles. And for me, it's very worrying when a generation, our own generation, believes that leadership must be outside ethical and moral values, because we can't be leaders that must change this country when you don't have values, when you don't have morals and ideas. The question of our ideological disposition is important, because in such debates, we must be able to show the same. And when we go to parliament, those values and principles and ideas are important, because when you're ideologically vacuous, as been displayed, you can't be in that parliament and debate about the debt question in this country. You can't be in that parliament and debate about climate change in this country. You can't be in that parliament and debate about challenges that we face as a nation. Talk about budget deficit, talk about a whole lot of economic and political and social challenges that we face. Only an ideologically clear young person with values and principles and thought capacity, and to express the same, in my view, is not browsing. To express the same shows that you are capable of being a leader to transform this country. But that's what parliament is all about. It's not about going there and raising your hand and clapping hands and supporting a party position or some elders caucus position. It's going there and articulating the position of a young people that is informed about our values, systems, and ideas. That's why I believe that a generation of our own kind must be able to be clear ideological, clear in terms of values, clear in terms of issues, so that we change the realities of the suffering masses of our people.
Okay, Talent, I'll bring it to you. We are trying to, unpack the context of the parliamentary whipping system, and Gift really gave us a detailed analysis of his view. What's your take, especially when we then look at how we're representing the people, masses plight?
Okay, I think I've said this before earlier on. I said, I was trying to describe parliament as a platform that can actually be utilized by young people to air out their grievances, to transform, as Comrade Ostallos was saying before. Parliament, what I'm saying is we can't really neglect to be part of parliament, because being part of parliament is actually exposing us or giving us the opportunity as young people to actually implement all these ideas that we are sharing, all these ideas that we are saying. So being part of that is actually, we are given the room to influence, right? So what I would say is we just need to ensure that these people, these 10 candidates that are going to parliament, we should also look at the capabilities, the potential. Are they able to deliver? Are they able to debate issues? Are they able to influence? Because we wouldn't want to just have people in the name of seniority or in the name of we need to check on the potential through our political parties, through all the party lists that we are going to submit to parliament. We need to check whether the person deserves, whether the people that are going there they do have the potential to do that. Because according to our constitution, yes, it says that what defines the youth, they should be under 35 years and below, right? But we can actually see some of the youth in political parties, they are more than that. They are more than 35 years, and I do not know whether they are still youth or what. So what I'm saying is that during the process of selection, we need to ensure that these people are 35 years and below, and they really represent youth, and they've got the capabilities and the potential to deliver, and they understand what it means to be the youth. Because being a youth is a difficult thing, because you are trying to survive. At the same time, you are trying to ensure that there is sustainable development, which will safeguard the future of your kids, the future of your youngsters. So we need people who understand, who try by any means to deliver to all those youth that are outside parliament, because we can see that 10 is a small number. So we cannot risk this small number by having people who do not understand the ideology or the mandate of it being in parliament.
Thank you very much, Talent. Our time is kind of running out, so I'll ask for our responses now to be a bit more brief. Like I mentioned earlier, the advantage is we have someone from the parliament who can, shed more light on this. And my question is, how do you think this parliamentary system, the parliamentary whipping system rather, would have the influence of the youth, especially if we're saying it has worked like this in the past couple of years, and if we're getting these 20 additional seats, what can we expect from that?
Okay, we need to understand that whipping system is not only in Zimbabwe. Britain has got a whipping system. All other countries, all parliaments, they've got this whipping system. So it's not only here in Zimbabwe. That's one thing we should also be able to appreciate. And again, I think the whipping system started way back. You remember the time of Moses? Moses told people that we need to cross the Red Sea. So if you had decided to go back, you were going to be, Pharaoh was going to get on you. Pharaoh's troop was going to get on you. So people were whipped to get through the Red Sea. So this is so clear. Whipping system, whenever you are in any situation or in any environment, you need then to be told what is the party line, how to toe on it, and also be able to understand. So we are looking at these 20 seats. What we need to also understand and appreciate is because these people come from political parties, as long as 129K is there, which is in our constitution, which says that if ever you are then going to be, if you're going to go against what your party says, then you can actually be recalled. Then what it means is that even as much as as it is, if we have not amended 129K, if we're going to be having these 20 people coming into play, this is how politics evolves. Politics acts like that, and even the 20, if they're going to be told to toe the party line, they have to go by it, because that is politics. We are in politics here, and we need to understand how politics evolves. The moment that we want to take zvinoitika kana kumwe kunhu kwatingatarisira tivatozviunza ukoko, kana kungava kana kuti unoti yo zvinoita kunganga ndo zvaunonza kuchechi, handizvo zvakatosiyana. Zvinoita kunganga zvinoita kuchechi. Those are two different things altogether. Just the same with politics. Politics has got its own way of running. We are whipped, and it's a good system because people won't be able to go offline. We need to be tracked on how best we can then be able to articulate, because after all, I believe that we'll be having a certain manifesto that we all of us signed to, and also we are all actually signatories to. So the moment that we say this is the manifesto that we need to be going with, that is what we need to understand, and that is what we're supposed to be agreeing to, and also be able to toe with that same party line. So for me, I think that the whipping system is good. It makes us, just like what happened in the MDCA. Do you know when we then had the research to find out all those people that were then penalized for standing when His Excellency was for getting up when His Excellency got in? They were saying that no, it was because we were told by Chamisa to do that, we were told by this to do that. Yet in actual fact, they were actually regretting to do that because they were being whipped. That is politics. Politics is whipping, and don't expect not to find it when you're in politics. If you so decide that you don't want to be whipped, get out of politics. Simple.
Okay, so as we continue, you are mentioning 129K when you're saying you have to be adhering to what your party is stipulating, right? And then earlier, Gift, you did mention that the challenge with MPs in Parliament is they're only doing things, saying things because that's what is in support with their political party. So my question now is, how then do we strike a balance? Do we discuss this as parties separately, and then we bring this in Parliament? And also, as we go into that, my question is directed to everyone, but we will start with Gift. Was your political party for or against Constitution Amendment number 2, and why? Was it for or against? We'll start with you, Gift.
Thank you very much. I think that let me start by correcting the position of the MDC Alliance around what happened. I think that, as she was saying, I don't.
Because we're running out of time.
I think that the whip system, in our view, when you want to strengthen the center, you strengthen the circumferences. We've got values, ideas, and we walked out of our MPs walked out of Parliament because we don't recognize Emerson. That is a public debate, and that's the end. We don't recognize Emerson. That's why he walked out of Parliament when he came in.
Remember, we're going through the chair.
Remember,
we're going through the chair.
That's
we
that's
can't be
your
having
president.
that from young people
We-
like
our-
this.
Now
It
listen,
just has to if ever we want
That's
to treat
our-
our president.
that's our
Yes,
position.
yes,
Yeah,
you
that's
have
your
to say
president.
no. You can't
Okay,
say
let's
Yeah,
continue with
no.
this.
You can't say
president.
Emerson. That
You
you
get
can't.
that,
say
Gift, because
president,
we're
not
trying
No,
to
you can't say
maintain
that.
what's there.
Yes.
We're
No,
trying
how
to
can he
maintain
be saying
what's there.
Emerson to
So-
someone
So
like
let's
that as old
acknowledge
as he
what's
is,
there,
and also being our
right?
president?
So,
You can't
Okay,
say
so,
that.
so,
let's
so yes,
continue.
we've got a
Okay.
principled position.
Principle
We
of
don't
what?
recognize. So
Yeah.
number 2, I'll speak to, I mean, that's the freedom that we have as a political organization. We don't, and will not be doing to
Okay, let's
counter-
continue.
to
Remember, we're
check
running
the
out of
different
time, so if
position.
we can continue with
Number
the facts.
2, I think that our position on the amendment, number 2, is that we reject it in total. For you, your second question was why. We reject it, number 1, because it entrenches executive tyranny. Number 2, the fact that it ensures that those that are supposed to retire, we reject the amendment, particularly on the term of office of judges. When you reach 70, there's a constitutional provision, you must retire. No one should save you from retirement, not even a president. Number 3, we reject amendment number 2 because the procedural, we believe that ordinary people did not participate sufficiently in that amendment, whereas that constitution was supposed to be amplified, not to be amputated. So we reject it because ordinary people were not at the center of it. Number 4, we reject amendment number 2 because we believe that amendment number 2 was rushed into Parliament. Our majority of people in Parliament were insufficient, a representative of the ordinary people and the people of Zimbabwe because of what had happened in Parliament. They were recalls. Number 5, as a principled position, we believe that the constitution must be supreme, No one, no individual, no arm of government between the three arms of government, the executive, the legislature, and the judiciary must be above the law. And the constitution is the supreme law of this country if we are truly a constitutional democracy. So on principle, on values, philosophically and ideologically, we believe that constitution overall actually undermines the spirit and letter of constitution as the supreme law of the land, because this is just being amended in that fashion. So we believe that it actually pushes rule by law, not rule of law. So we reject amendment number 2 in total.
Okay, just briefly, as the MDC Alliance, do you think we can reach a point where you divorce politics and governance? Because obviously we are mentioning that there's a lot of politics and whatnot, but do we want to run the risk of letting our political tensions affect the governance of the country, affect the strides we're trying to make? Comment only for MDC Alliance, not for any other
Of course,
political
as the
party.
MDC, we believe that unity is important and progress is important, but exposing lies is, in our view, not politics. It's actually about the truth of how things are. Because once we don't say the truth on fear of being quoted to be political or being labeled to be political, we have a problem. Because our task is to expose all the lies and claim noisy victory. So our politics, at the end of the day, influenced by our values and ideological persuasion, must be able to ensure that there's good governance in our country, must ensure that there is proper governance of our day-to-day running of different institutions of government.
Thank you very much. I'll bring it to you, Tenda. I did ask earlier whether your party was for the Constitution Amendment and why. And I'll also direct the same question as to how we can divorce politics from governance. Should we and could we?
Okay, thank you very much for that question. Sometimes you really become so agitated when you see us as young people. We are the future. We are supposed to be having certain values and certain ethics that I believe as young people we need also to be able to embrace, even elders as it may be. So it becomes very, very disheartening when you see such characters also coming from our very own young people, which we are supposed to be leaders of tomorrow or leaders of today, which we're supposed to learn from. So for me, I think I've become so agitated because from the party that I come from, we don't have that. We have got well-cultured young people. We have got respect for older people. That is me. But anyway, to respond to your question, I think I need to understand that as in our party, when we had Constitution Amendment number 2, we were very much for Constitution Amendment number 2 for reasons that we had to also look at issues to do with inclusion of young people, also making sure that at least women are also gender equity. This was also one of the most issues that we also were looking at, and also looking at making sure that at least even when it comes to delimitation, would actually also be looking at devolving of funds, whereby we have got the Metropolitan and Councils Act also being put into play. So for us, when you looked at Constitutional Amendment number 2, it also was looking at transparency and accountability, whereby MPs were also supposed to be removed from that, so that at least we do not have also people this is exactly what we will be having from young people, from MPs, if ever they were going to be included on the devolution funds. So for us, when we looked at Constitutional Amendment number 2, we're saying that it was looking at issues to do with even inclusion of the people living with disability, inclusion of women, inclusion of young people, and also making sure that at least our country can then be looking at even having legislative measures that are looking at full representation when it comes to the president and also the duties that the president is supposed to be doing. So for me, I thought that was actually a good thing. And also issues to do with corporate of governance, and for us as the ruling party, and also even any other ruling party, we are going to be having any other in any, we need to understand that the ruling party there is no way that it can then shoot down its own policies. So for us as the ruling party, we were so much for our policies, and we still believe that at least within that was part of our manifesto as NPF, and we also agreed to that. So this is what we had to also make sure that it is implemented.
Okay, Talent, if you could just weigh in as we close.
Okay, not to repeat what has been said earlier on, I think I would say we as MDCT, we did not vote as the whole party, but we have got our parliamentarians who voted for this bill, and they were not whipped to support or not to support this bill, but rather they voted out of their individual conscience. It has been said that if you look at this bill, it came with many clauses. It included devolution, it included extension of the women quota in councils, and also youth quota. These are things which affected the majority of our parliamentarians, for they are women, and also some of them, they are young women, and they were put at a scenario, at a situation whereby the amendment bill was to extend their quota, their term of operating in parliament, and using their individual conscience, they were free to vote for what they think is right.
Thank you very much. Well, that is all the time we had for today. I would like to thank my guests, Honorable Hon Mavetera from ZANU-PF, Talent Madaba from MDCT, and Gift Siziba from MDC Alliance. Thank you very much for joining me. And remember, our discussion was Beyond Constitutional Amendment Number 2 Act, Political Parties' Perspective on the Youth Quota System. Remember, this program was brought to you by Zenpapers Television Network, together with our partners from YET, Youth Empowerment and Transformation Trust. Have a good day.